I worked in acute ischemic stroke, which is a clot problem in the brain. And at that time, there were no good solutions for removing clot in the brain, which creates a condition of stroke, which is what often leads to paralysis or speech slur or vision slur. And we developed this stent-like clot retriever at that time, called Solitaire FR, which is now marketed and sold by Medtronic and is a market leader in its own space. That one demonstrated, though it was third product to be approved in the US for thrombectomy for acute ischemic stroke, it demonstrated a significant leap in neurological outcome improvements. And that became, after that, American Stroke Association announced that the removal of clot using clot retriever should be the standard of care for acute ischemic stroke. So that was a major breakthrough, and the product continues to lead. So a lot of our inspiration to treat pulmonary embolism in the same way came from our prior success in developing treatments for acute ischemic stroke.
Today on the MedTech 101 podcast, I have Dr. Sanjay Shrivastava, who is actually quite working on something that's really exciting, and I thought this would be worth talking about because it's something that maybe affects one of our relatives or will affect one of our close members or like loved ones, friends, etc. And it's something that has uh, been a problem for a long time in terms of how to deal with it. And this is basically blood clots like in your veins and what that means, etc. So he started a company called Innova Vascular, which is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, roughly just 3 years or 4 years old now, and they're based in the Silicon Valley in California, the United States. And yeah, so I have him today on the podcast without really delaying much time. Welcome to the podcast, Sanjay.
Thank you, Rodney. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So yeah, just to get started, I know you've done quite a lot of time in university. You started doing your engineering degree in India, and then you ended up doing your PhD like in the US and in Miami, I think. And what could you tell us about your experience, your background in terms of your qualifications leading up to this point in time?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, so I did my undergraduate in engineering in India, and then got a scholarship to come to the US for doing a PhD, and I completed a PhD at University of Florida. And for the last 25 years, I have been in the medical device industry, developing and commercializing innovative medical devices. And my subspecialty within that has become cardiovascular medical devices. So during my tenure here in these 25 years, what happened is evolution of a new specialty, interventional cardiology, interventional radiology, interventional neurology, or neuroradiology intervention. And what that means is that doctors can go inside the body just by sticking the needle at the groin, and they can use arteries and veins as pathways, and they can go anywhere from head to toe. They can go inside people's heads, inside people's legs, in liver, in kidneys, and lungs, and treat any of the cardiovascular problem or body plumbing problem. So basically, the blood flows um, in the body away from the heart using arteries, vessels that are called arteries, and there's a whole network of arteries that go in the entire body. And return blood flows through what's called veins. And both these arteries and veins near the groin become what's called superficial in medical language. What that means, they get close to the skin. So you don't have to cut down the body. You can treat acute ischemic stroke. You can treat brain aneurysms without ever cutting the skull open. You can just go stick a needle at the groin, and using imaging and these arteries as your pathways, you could travel from groin all the way to brain, or groin all the way into the heart. So in my 25 years of career, every 3 to 5 years, I have kind of taken one part of the body and worked on developing a new set of tools to fix some kind of body plumbing problem, and commercialize those, and moved on to a different part of the body. So I'll talk about various things that I worked on, or I'm working on right now in this podcast. In this
Nice.
podcast.
Nice. That's really exciting, really, because I think it's quite fascinating for a lot of people to know that before we didn't go inside the body to that much, but right now with the technology that has developed over the last years, etc., we've been able to go down on a micro scale, and this is quite interesting because when you basically say going from the groin to the brain is basically saying that is basically entering the body, like the vein in your body from your groin area, and following all that vein all the way to the brain to extract that blood clot that may be creating a blockage or and things like that. And this is like something that's quite exciting, and this like led you to Innova Vascular. So what could you tell us about your company now and what you guys are particularly focusing on, particularly in this problem that you're working with?
Yeah, yeah. So Innova Vascular was founded. This is the second company that I founded or co-founded, and prior to that, I worked for large medical device companies, including Medtronic, Johnson and Johnson, Abbott, and Edwards Life Sciences, in various functions, and including business development, including global marketing, including research and development. Um, and Innova Vascular was founded to remove clot from patients that have what's called venous thromboembolism. In other words, pulmonary embolism or deep vein thrombosis. And deep vein thrombosis is a condition when a clot forms in an undesirable manner in people's veins in their usually in their legs. By itself, deep vein thrombosis or DVT as it's called may be symptomatic or may not be symptomatic. Um, and when a piece of, if it gets diagnosed, then it does need to be treated, and it can be treated with using a pharmacological route, using a drug or family of drugs that's called TPA, transplasminogen activator, which is a clot buster drug. It works sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes, and that's why the new treatments that are evolving, they are more of these mechanical treatments, that since we don't have to, in our method of treatment that I described, these interventional treatments, that you don't have to cut that part of the body open that you're treating. You can remotely access from through the groin or through radial artery, etc. So in this case, through the groin or jugular vein, you can access and you can pull and suck the clot out. So my company, Innova Vascular, that I founded and have been operational for about 3 years now, has FDA cleared products to remove blood by pulling and sucking it out using in a minimally invasive manner or interventional method of treatment. So the specialties that perform these treatments are interventional cardiology, interventional radiology, or sometimes interventionally trained vascular surgeons. And I'll talk more about more details on these products, but I'll pause here for you to.
No, thank you very much. And I think you mentioned quite another big word there, pulmonary embolism, which is basically a blood clot in the lungs, in simpler terms. And the reason why we're actually even talking about blood clots happening in our veins is because like the blood clot basically stops blood reaching a certain part of the body, and that can create problems and stuff, and different names for different things in terms of what it is. So deep vein thrombosis, if it's somewhere else, particularly in your leg, for example, pulmonary embolism, if it's a blood clot in your lungs, just a way to simplify those things. And one of the things you mentioned is the methods that have been used from a pharmaceutical point of view, with using medicine or drugs to treat this, using like blood thinners. That's what other people call them in the UK. Medication that tries to reduce the size of that clot. And but going there mechanically, it's much faster. There's no denying that. But before we even touch on the sides of like how you guys do it, like what would you say are the the sort of like the genetics and environments like linked with these blood clots happening in the body?
So the blood clots can form in deep veins based on environmental factors, genetic factors, and lifestyle factors. Long plane flights when patients are bedridden for long times after an orthopedic surgery, trauma, bad pregnancy, etc. That's where they are known to form. And the treatment that I talked about, the lytics or the family of drugs that actually um, reduces the clot, that's different from the blood thinners. Blood thinners or anticoagulants, they prevent clot from forming. They are proactive, but they don't reduce the clot that already formed. So the lytics work sometimes. They also have their own complications, and that's why these mechanical treatments, as this whole interventional medicine is evolving, and there are interventionalists around the world available to these procedures, we develop for each condition. We are developing these solutions. So I touched on pulmonary embolism, but didn't describe what that is. Is a piece of clot gets dislodged from legs where it formed, and most of the time through the return veins all drain into the right side of the heart, right through right atrium, then they drain into the right ventricle, and from right ventricle this deoxygenated blood or venous blood gets pumped into lungs through a vessel called pulmonary artery. And then from there it gets the gas exchange happens, and then the oxygenated blood gets pumped into the left side of the heart. So the disease that I'm talking about that deals with the right side of the heart and pulmonary artery. So this clot, when in the veins, the clot that forms in veins, when it travels, it ends up in pulmonary artery. It's called pulmonary artery, even though it's carrying deoxygenated blood away from heart into the lungs. And often these are big chunks of clots. So the Innova Vascular's product, there is a stent-like clot retriever called Laguna Clot Retriever, and there's a Malibu aspiration catheter. Doctors go, they intervene often at the femoral vein. They will travel under image guidance, such as under fluoroscopy. They will travel through the right side of the heart into the pulmonary artery, and we're doing a clinical study right now to demonstrate the safety and effectiveness for pulmonary embolism. It's called TRUST trial, where we are enrolling sites and patients both in the US as well as outside the US, where they go and they remove the clot by aspiration, which is suction. And then if the clot is tough, like there's three kinds of clot. There is acute clot, there is chronic clot that's been sitting there for a while, got attached to the vessel wall. Those are tough to remove. And then there's in between, that's subacute clot. So what Laguna Clot Retriever does is that if you cannot aspirate, which all the acute clot usually you can aspirate, you can suck it out easily, but when you cannot aspirate, then Laguna Clot Retriever goes, it helps dislodge the clot, and then together with aspiration, your overall clot removal efficiency and effectiveness both goes up substantially. So we got the product approved for what's called peripheral vascular clot removal right now, and we're doing a clinical study to demonstrate safety and effectiveness for pulmonary embolism.
Nice, nice. That's really exciting to hear that. And I think people listening right now will be wondering, with the with obviously the Laguna clot removal system or retrieval system and the Malibu aspiration catheter, can they also be used in different parts of the body when they enter the body, or does it only have to be from the groin area?
Typically, doctors prefer to do these treatments for the diseases that I talked about through groin, but yeah, they can be accessed through other jugular access, another mode that's used for these types of products. That's the jugular vein access. But before, what might be interesting for your audience to know, before this, from 2007 to 2011, I worked in acute ischemic stroke, which is a clot problem in the brain. And at that time, there were no good solutions for removing clot in the brain, which creates a condition of stroke, which is what often leads to paralysis or speech slur or vision slur. And we developed this stent-like clot retriever at that time, called Solitaire FR, which is now marketed and sold by Medtronic and is a market leader in its own space. That one demonstrated, though it was third product to be approved in the US for thrombectomy for acute ischemic stroke, it demonstrated a significant leap in neurological outcome improvements. And that became, after that, American Stroke Association announced that removal of clot using clot retriever should be the standard of care for acute ischemic stroke. So that was a major breakthrough, and the product continues to lead. So a lot of our inspiration to treat pulmonary embolism in the same way came from our prior success in developing treatments for acute ischemic stroke.
Well, no, that's really great. And just a quick question, really. I mean, now we're working on how to basically reduce this, remove that, etc. But regarding the diet, is there like anything that you have seen for people listening in terms of what maybe certain foods lead to that, and are all like clots that happen like from the blood linked to a certain type of diet, and what could people do listening right now in terms of improve their diets to make sure that they reduce their chances of this happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same things for any cardiovascular disease in general or overall fitness that, portion control, the balanced diet and nutrition, those are all important things. And that's not my area of expertise, so I don't want to comment too much on. We have tools to treat the product. That's what I can comment on. I don't, yeah, I'm not an authority on why the disease occurs.
And so, all right, nice, and yeah, definitely. And then obviously looking at the sort of like the standard care which you mentioned, which has been mechanical, which was used for the ischemic strokes, and now you guys are using it for the DVT, which is the deep vein thrombosis, and as well as other clots that might be happening in the lungs, for example. What would you say, like where does the current state of the industry like sits right now, and where do you think the future is going to be going, like how from your own perspective working in the industry, what do you think will be
Yeah,
20 years from now?
yeah. No, that's a great question. That thrombectomy is gaining popularity in certain subsets of these disease states, and more companies are coming up with products with their own little angles to it. They are investing in doing clinical studies to demonstrate safety and effectiveness. So, field is definitely moving forward in the direction of acute treatments, in the direction of these mechanical treatments, and there are many more thrombectomies being performed today than they were being performed 5 years ago for these conditions. And I have a feeling that in the next 5 to 10 years, the market's growing very rapidly. It's going to double where it is for thrombectomy devices, based on majority of it is being in the U.S. alone, and the rest of the world also. The market slowly starts to follow, and especially as more and more interventionalists are become available to do these types of treatments. But the future clearly is towards minimally invasive treatments for most cardiovascular diseases, not just the thrombus removal in PE or DVT or arterial thrombus, but also in you know minimally invasive treatments for transcatheter heart valves today. The stents have almost taken over much of the coronary artery disease today. Peripheral vascular stents have gained traction. Even cancer treatments are being done through in a transcatheter manner, which is all of this minimally invasive ways to treat these diseases by sticking a needle at the groin and using arteries or veins to travel to the site of the disease. Um, Other liver cancers are being treated that way. AAA abdominal aortic aneurysms are being treated that way. Moreover, even the electrical diseases like arrhythmias in the heart are being treated through catheter-based ablation treatments, RF ablation or irreversible electroporation. So these types of, and this whole family, I'd say that's called interventional treatments or endovascular treatments. And the brain, we touched on acute ischemic stroke, which is the sudden occurrence of clot in the brain, which also goes from somewhere else, either from heart or from carotid arteries, but also brain aneurysms. Aneurysms are being treated using these catheter means, where doctors go and they can put coils and fill up the coils in the brain aneurysms so aneurysm doesn't rupture. Or they have these intrasaccular treatments or clotted or flow diverters that they put in the parent vessel, so blood flow gets diverted from the aneurysm sac and aneurysm eventually clots off. So it's absolutely fascinating on what's happening in the world, by developing these newer methods to treat, and it's serving millions and millions of patients today collectively for all these methods.
Definitely, there's no denying that. But a quick question that came to my mind when you mentioned minimum invasive techniques becoming more popular. Like, what would be the recovery time for someone going through such a procedure? If someone's listening right now, they're probably nervous about how, like, the amount of pain they'll feel, how long it'll take to recover. How would you say? Do you know the specifics in terms of how the recovery process once they've gone under this procedure?
Yeah. Generally, they're sent home within the next day or so after most of these minimal invasive procedures. So just imagine, many of these were extremely invasive open surgeries, if they were treatments like that, and that have very high mortality and morbidity, meaning complications and death rates. And using these minimally invasive surgery procedures, the mortality goes down substantially, morbidity goes down substantially, recovery times are faster, the ICU and hospital stay times are less. So overall, they are very, very cost effective as well in most of the cases.
Nice, nice. That's really great to hear because I think that will make a lot of people quite more relaxed. And just to just one question as well, just in terms of like where you guys at the moment, because I know you got the 510K, and that means it's one of the fastest pathways to market. For people listening right now, do you know? Do you rough? I know it's hard to estimate like in medtech in terms of when your product is going to be on the market, but perhaps you could share with us that if you have the information on that, and also what stage Innova Vascular is at the moment. Are you guys still raising capital, etc.? In terms of like, what are your goals in the short term?
So we are early commercial stage company in the US. We are commercializing, we are selling the product, and we are also doing a clinical study for getting showing the safety and effectiveness in pulmonary embolism. So that's the stage we are in. We will continue to advance the care. That's the mission of Innova Vascular. We are a small company with essentially focused on this particular family of products. We do have a few products and a few others in the pipeline, and that's what we're working on, and we'll continue to advance the care using these tools, and collaboration with physicians is a very important part of our work because we have a team of engineers here that develop these solutions, but to develop these we have to work in partnership with the physicians who treat these because they provide feedback to these tools on what's working, what's not in benchtop models and animal testing, before we submit the data to the FDA and do clinical studies, etc., and or commercialize these tools. So I wanted to mention that as well. That's a very important part of this development. And there's a whole product development process that we follow to develop these products so they are safe and effective when they get used. And that's why it's a regulated industry. We submit all of that to the FDA, then FDA allows us the approval or clearance to commercialize these products, and that's where we are. We are FDA cleared, and we are in early commercial stages.
And I think a lot of people can be happy to hear that because I think to get to this point, it takes a long time in this industry and stuff. And definitely what I'll also be doing for more details in terms of the things that were spoken today. I'll be putting them on the link in the description below this episode so people can find you guys. And but one question also that I've been getting from people in terms of like where can people reach out to you? Do you prefer just being reached out on LinkedIn, or do you have an email specifically that you, or like a platform that you get your inputs? Yeah.
Yeah, we have a website www.innovavascular.com, INNOVA vascular, VASCULAR.com. That's a good way to learn a little bit about the company. We're still somewhat of in a stealth mode, so we don't have a full information on the details of the products. Though we are commercial, but we're early commercial here, um, and um, and you can find our 510K etc. on the FDA's website too. With respect to myself personally, yeah, depending on the purpose of outreach, LinkedIn is a good place. My email address is ss@innovavascular.com. People can email me as well.
Perfect. So yeah, so guys, I'll be putting all this information below the episode today, and yeah, thank you very much, Sanjay, for coming on the podcast. I think that was quite informative. Like this device is going to save millions of people's lives. The value of it goes beyond any region. This would be something that will be applicable to all markets. So I can't wait to. And well, obviously, you have to start with FDA clearance, then you have to come to Europe, do the clearance for Europe and for Asia, etc., Africa, South America, and yeah, and then we'll continue saving more people's lives and helping a lot of people. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.